Hello, before I begin today's review of African and Greenland, I have a trivia question for you. What country is it that Greenland is a territory of? Correct, it is Denmark. And so the next book is going to be about a Danish woman who lived in Africa, in Kenya actually, so actually the other side of Africa from today's author. But it's an interesting exchange of cultures there. So that'll be the next book I read. Just wanted to share that. Enjoy the video. Hello there, and welcome back to Mike Reads the World, where today I will be discussing An African in Greenland by Tété-Michel Kpomassie from the little country of Togo in West Africa. And this is one of the most excellent memoirs and ethnographies that I've ever read. And this comes from somebody that at one point in my life I wanted to study anthropology. And it's probably good that I didn't, but the interest has always stayed with me, in anthropology and ethnographies, and trying to present a culture on its own terms in the way that the rest of the world can understand. And this man had no training or studies in anthropology, but I think he produced one of the greatest works of this that exists. And the title, I don't even think does it justice. An African in Greenland. That's really intriguing, isn't it? Like, how did that happen? So certainly the author's identity has some, pull to one wanting to read this book. And it does matter because the author is literally the only African that most of these Greenlanders have ever seen. And throughout the book, he's certainly the only one that has come to live among them and to compare his culture to theirs and to bring knowledge of their culture back to his. All of this stuff is important and sacred and wonderful, and we are really, I think, losing a lot of that in today with all this fighting over identity politics or anti-identity politics. I mean, come on, we've got way better things to waste our time on than getting obsessed over either of those two perspectives. So this book to me does break through that, but it does not shy away of showing the raw and the ugly aspects of existence of this culture. It's not shying away from just the poverty, the raw food, the lack of hygiene in some cases. He shows the Eskimos, or Inuits maybe is the better term, as Eskimo was actually a word that comes from a word attributed by their enemies, as this book kind of explains, but it does default to Eskimo most often, so that's the word I'm going to use throughout the review. And so this author, the first third of the book is him trying just to get to Greenland, which is totally it's a challenge in itself. He has to get first out of his own country into other countries in Africa. He ends up working for his embassy in another country. He learns a few languages. He has to work his way up, and then eventually goes to Europe. He comes from a small tribe. He's a Togo man like any other. And so he eventually gets to Europe, gets some help, gets his way to Denmark, and then most of the book is actually about the 16 months that he spends in Greenland in the years of 1978 to 1979. And, it's such a... It's really hard to capture what about this book that I love so much, but to distill it is that I feel I walked that year and 4 months in this man's shoes. Not only in the sense that I feel like I became him while reading the book, but experienced the beauty and the terror of living on the frontier, in Greenland in such a harsh and cold and beautiful environment. It's this idea of north that we have in the in the United States, and we have in Europe too. This idealization of the North, of being in a place that is harsh and cold and beautiful, and the author, in fact, when he is in the southern Greenland towns, is a bit disenchanted because he realizes that the culture has changed, that he's not finding Eskimos who are hunting seals and whales and things. They're being encouraged to fish. It's for a number of reasons, and most of them have either one turned into fishermen, or two are just living off the government and getting drunk. So he becomes disenchanted with this, and is also very surprised at the sort of libertine way of sharing women among young people, and even sometimes the older people. Those are some elements to it, but just, we're talking small towns here. Nothing over a few thousand people, I think, is the largest town he is actually in, and most of them are under 100 or a few hundred. And he works his way north. He's working his way north throughout the book. So you have almost this literary quality to the story, this literary sense of, depending the way you look at it, almost a descending into an inferno in some ways, because as he works his way north in search of this idealized Eskimo culture, which he eventually does find more and more of, he is also confronted with greater harshness to the life, especially concerning this literal dog-eat-dog, literally, relationship between like the Huskies and people, and how people will eat the Huskies will eat each other, Huskies will eat people, but it's they're so integral to the culture as transportation and so on, and it's a fascinating book on so many levels. I encourage everybody to read it. It's one of those that really makes reading the world worth it. Really does. Because when in my life would I have ever read this book if I wasn't forced to find a book for Togo? Never would have read it. But really incredible stuff, and really too breaks. It's good to break myself out of this sort of like, when you're getting too obsessed with certain philosophies, and like, I have my favorite authors, I have my sort of perspectives on the world. I love my German Romanticism, and the explorations that it had about society that are, it seems like we're totally forgetting all the good things and bad things that it actually produced nowadays. But it's like that, I love that stuff, but I need books like this that break through that and just totally throw that aside and say, no, this is a new thing, but it also has themes that you can connect. Like I said, so you can view this book as he goes further north as a descending into an inferno, but it's also an arrival at greater and closer truth of just kind of raw existence of man versus nature. He encounters greater poverty, greater uncleanliness in living conditions. He encounters even people treating each other more harshly. It dispels these ideas that, it's all about the community. Old people are sometimes forgotten and left to die. There are many people will turn their back on their neighbor and let them starve. He shows these people as individuals as they are, and as I think there's a quote on the back of this book that says it very well, by Catherine Bouton, I guess. His honesty, while occasionally brutal, in the end serves the Greenlanders well. He pays them the compliment of showing them as they are. And now I can really dive into the writing. Now, the writing, as I said, has many literary qualities, but it is paired with some sort of explanation. the kind of explanation that you would get in an anthropological work, an ethnography. It takes its time to just explain in a kind of point by point or rational way how different customs work, which has its good and bad. But treat it as both a literary work of nonfiction, a memoir, and an ethnography. That's because that's what it is. And it has, there are things about that I find very enjoyable too. So I'm just trying to find like just a really good example of how beautiful this writing can get. He nails these descriptions with such clarity that like I feel like I've been in Greenland. Like I kind of want to go, but like watching the ice, watching the moonlight reflect across the ice, creating just this really eerie landscape, or when he sees the northern lights for the first time, or which I can vouch for, having seen them myself. He gives in this book the best description of the northern lights I have ever read, and for literary qualities, like in just making you feel like that's it. He nailed it. And I have found myself having seen them from where I live. I mean, I'm on the 45th parallel, so rarely we get a chance to see them. But when I caught them, it was like I had a hard time describing exactly what it was like to other people. But this book nails it. So there's a few pictures in the middle, not many, but just enough to kind of, give you impressions. Good God, I really love this book, and it's told in 4 parts. The first part is just him getting to Greenland, and then the other 3 parts are all kind of his journey north. Very progressive journey, bit by bit journey to the north. And of course, a huge theme in the book too is how the changes, the yearly changes, completely just change the landscape and even the psychology of the people, to the extent that he describes how autumn, when the days start getting darker and they're about to go into 5 months of dark, of winter, that people just literally start going crazy. And there's actually a name for it. It's like polar hysteria or something like that. I think that's what it was. And this is kind of offset too by like the even like the summer when they have like 4 or 5 months of pure day. He describes how that even though winter is cold and harsh and boring and dark, that it's clean. And so once the summer comes and melts all that away, you start to see all the trash along the houses or by the streets, and you start to see like the dogs, the huskies start to smell, and it's like it captures all of it, the beauty, the ugliness, I don't know, like how much else can I say? I'm sure there's more. I keep flipping through this, trying to just find at least something I can read, but I'm really in awe not only of this story but how it's told. Yeah, there's descriptions of like Christmas and New Year's celebrations and how those all go. And you really get the sense of being in a culture that's not your own, like a very, very alien culture to your own. And to be able to feel that, in the beginning we have sort of descriptions of the narrator's culture. And he once in a while, he actually quite often compares sort of his own as a comparative anthropological work. It's very effective because it's not only that he's the first African really to live in Greenland that anybody knows anyway. It's like he's also the first to, he's most definitely the first to make a comparative like analysis between these two cultures. And it just gets back to like, what is the value of anthropology and trying to understand culture. Like, we can't just, you know, wipe it away and say there's no cultures, but we also can't deny that, like, you know, cultures aren't these fixed things. They adapt. If they can make their lives easier, their people are going to make their lives easier, and so cultures change over time. But then that also brings with it sort of a destruction. So greater freedom, greater destruction. I don't know. I'm astounded that some people are able to just kind of like take all of what I'm saying right now, distill it into one sentence, and then like not think about it anymore, because it's just something that I'm totally in wonder at. Yeah, just really, yeah, read it yourself. I can't find a, oh, I found the Northern Lights. Yes, I did it. All right, so I'll finish with this, the description of the Northern Lights that I thought just really, really nailed it. So, on the night of the day the first snow fell, I was frightened by a bizarre phenomenon. I was walking home alone, and the night was still. Suddenly looking up, I saw long white streaks whirling in the wind above my head. It was like the radiance of some invisible hearth, from which dazzling light rays shot out, streamed into space, and spread to form a great, deep-folded, phosphorescent curtain which moved and shimmered, turning rapidly from white to yellow, from pink to red. The curtain suddenly rose, then fell again further on. The wind shook it gently like an immense transparent drapery, carried by the breeze and drifting on thin air. Its movements were now regular as an ocean swell, now hurried, jerky, leaping and tumbling like a kite. There were continual changes in the intensity, the motion, the iridescent play of colors, and the ripplings of this strange gigantic veil that floated through the night sky. I stood watching it for 10 minutes, stunned and fascinated. Not knowing what it could be, I rushed home and babbled something about it to my hosts, who didn't bother to go outside but informed me that I had just been watching the aurora borealis. I went out to watch it again for a long, long time. So much more impressive was it than anything I had ever read about these polar auroras. So I will leave you with that. In awe of this book. Beautiful stuff. Check it out. And yeah, An African in Greenland by Tété-Michel Kpomassie. So let's look forward to a Danish woman, early 20th century Danish woman's perspective on Kenya and out of Africa next time on Mike Reads the World. Thank you.